The Plympton Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the November 2017 edition of the Plympton Podcast. I'm Andrew Hill. This month we hear about matters concerning the residents of Newnham and Colebrook at their recent Have Say meeting, and we talk with the man producing this year's Theatre Royal Pantomime. Other topics on the agenda in this month's episode are Hedgehogs and also the Plympton St Mary Neighbourhood Plan, which has now entered a public consultation phase. So we start with Hedgehogs. The Plymouth Hedgehog Care and Rehab Group were the beneficiaries of a tabletop sale at Plympton Academy recently, and later on we'll be talking with the 14-year-old who was the inspiration behind that event. But firstly, Linda Squires, who founded the Hedgehog Care and Rehab charity, told me more about how the charity came into being.
I started 13 years ago and I just had a family of hedgehogs in my garden. It was coming up to mid-December and I heard on the news that if they were under 600 grams they might not survive the winter hibernation. So I took it upon myself to phone around and found out that I needed to weigh these little tiny hedgehogs in my garden and they were only 300 grams. So I had myself a 4-foot rabbit hutch and put them in there, kept them warm, lots and lots of loose hay, kitten biscuits and chicken and jelly, cat food, chicken and jelly, dog food, and cleaned them each day. And come the April of the following year, I was able to release them back into my garden and they were absolutely delightful. After that, my neighbours started to bring me some poorly hedgehogs and injured hedgehogs, and that was a totally different ball game. I did explain that I didn't know anything about these hedgehogs, but they assured me that they couldn't find anywhere else at 10 o'clock at night. And so I started taking in sick and injured hedgehogs and started to do lots and lots of courses over in Guernsey at Guernsey Hedgehog Hospital. Up at Vale they do a hedgehog first aid course, and with the information I had from those I started to learn a lot more and to meet with vets who were able to treat the injuries and some of the very poorly hedgehogs that we had come in.
Now, what is causing these injuries to the hedgehogs?
One of the commonest ones would be dog attacks. Our lovely pet dogs will not find the hedgehog spines a problem and can take chunks out of the side of the hedgehog. And if it's Jack Russells or maybe some of the terriers, they can actually find them quite a thing to play with, maybe imagining it's a ball and not a living animal. So, yeah, our pet dogs can be a problem. The other thing is garden netting. If I could ask anyone who's got garden netting over fruit bushes, strawberries, things like that, if it's staked down, it's fine. But if it's loose, the hedgehogs will get their spines hooked in them, their legs hooked in them. And unfortunately, a hedgehog, when it's nesting, will turn round in circles. And sadly, as it circles, the netting gets tighter and tighter. So if they do get into trouble in your gardens, or football netting is another one, if you can cut the netting from around them and then get them straight away, either to myself, can I give my number out?
Yes, sir.
075 852 30527, or if you phone the veterinary hospitals or vets, then they will be able to release them.
Now, we heard on the news fairly recently that over in Plymstock there was a very sad incident where some children were using a hedgehog as a football. Do you find willful abuse a particular problem with the hedgehogs that come into your care or not?
Thankfully, we don't get too many cases like that. We have had one or two over the years, and the RSPCA have always been involved with those and tried to speak to the groups that have caused such crimes. The thing that we would like to do are things like compost heaps and places maybe under sheds when they're being demolished. Try and see if we can use some gentle persuasion to ask people to look just before they start to move these things, because every year we get families of hedgehogs that have just nested underneath the shed or in the compost heap, and of course people go to turn the compost or remove the shed and there's a family underneath that's suddenly trying to run for safety in all directions, and if the babies are too small, unless they can be found, it's not such a good end to the story. So yes, if people are happy to it's just try and check in these places, and then maybe leave them for the 4 or 5 weeks, just for the babies to get big enough, and then find their own nest sites.
Now, we're just about to come into the season for hedgehogs to hibernate, and I suppose people are also thinking about clearing up their gardens in advance of the winter, and there may well be instances where people start to clear up some things and they find a hedgehog under perhaps some wood or something they have in their garden. Is the best thing there to sort of leave the hedgehog be and keep those things in place until next year?
Oh, that would be absolutely wonderful. If you do uncover a hedgehog, then if you can, as quickly and as quietly, just replace everything safely over the hedgehog again. That will probably mean that the hedgehog won't start to try and look for another hibernation site. Hedgehogs often hibernate for short periods, and then they wake up to go to the toilet and then go into a different sleep mode, and then they'll go back into hibernation. What we don't want is them being disturbed, and as they move around, they're using up their valuable brown fat reserves. So if you do find them under a pile of leaves at the back of your greenhouse, if it's possible, just to leave them where they are and put down all the material on top of them, then hopefully they'll have a very successful winter period or nest.
And I'll be continuing my chat with Linda again a little later. Speeding down Borrington Hill has been a problem for some years, but a traffic calming scheme is imminently about to be introduced, as Ward Councillor Patrick Nicholson announced at a residents' meeting recently.
We've now had a date of the 17th of November. 17th of November when the works are proposed to start, so they've been advertised, the representations are being considered, the scheme is being implemented as proposed, albeit that there is some discussion that Ward Council is going to have with the Highway Authority around some just very localised issues in terms of one house, which we'll deal with sort of over and above the proposals. So we haven't yet, it's been advertised, but we haven't yet circulated that in a way of just an information note, so we'll do that. But as we say, it's starting on the 17th, and I think it's taking a couple of weeks to implement. So that's good news, because that uses up about £11,000 of our budget, which we're keen to actually spend.
One resident at the meeting was concerned about the adequacy of current signage informing large lorries that it was unsuitable for them to go downhill into the one-way section of the road.
Well, part of the proposals include signage.
Yes.
So there will be new signage going in. It's not there at the moment around the fact that the road's being narrowed further, and obviously the fact that it is unsuitable. So, yeah, happy to take that on, but we will see new signage as part of the proposal.
It's not very good at the moment, you're quite right.
When it's implemented or during the construction phase, if there are any issues at all, please let us know, and we're happy to obviously to get involved. Okay, so once that's done, then obviously be an evaluation of the scheme, and if there's any sort of issues that just need to be rectified, then we'll pick them up following that.
The Plympton St Mary Neighbourhood Forum has produced a local plan for the St Mary's ward, and a number of local meetings are currently taking place to discuss it. I went along to the first of those meetings at Colebrook Community Centre, where Chairman Rose Hamley started by telling me more about the forum and its function.
Well, the Neighbourhood Forum initially was formed by members of the public, helped by the St Mary councillors, and we formed what we now call the Plympton St Mary Forum to look at the Plympton St Mary draft plan in conjunction with the joint local plan.
And you've started a round of consultations now, but this has been sort of the culmination of a lot of background work that has gone on. What has shaped the plan up to this stage?
Well, we started off with a very big committee, and then we eventually went down to some sort of subcommittees, and we met, and then several people took on sort of like we do in economy, education, transport and getting around. Each one took one little portion of that, or two of them, and put their views and things into it, views of the forum that we've taken over the period of time we've been meeting. And then eventually, with the culmination the beginning of this month, we met with the whole of the committee, and they had a chance to look at our draft plan, and then the chance then to agree or disagree with what we put down. And then that started a very swift trying to get the draft plan printed and out to the public, so we could start our round of consultations. This is the first of 11.
And there have been some previous consultations prior to this, because you've done some surveys and things like that up until this point.
We started off at the very beginning. We did a survey in Ridgeway, in a couple of places. We did over a couple of Saturdays. We then did a survey which we went out to every business property, every business within the Plympton St Mary ward. And then the results of that, we got that result back, because we have to prove that we are doing and consulting with the public. And now, obviously, the weekend before last, we actually decided to issue all these leaflets to every single person that lives within the ward of Plympton St Mary, and we had about 6,000 leaflets to deliver. And it seemed an unsurmountable task when I sat on the Friday. We didn't get the leaflets till the last Friday week. But I can say they're almost 95% delivered now, which is an absolutely incredible feat to have done.
So what are the sort of key points in this plan so far?
Well, obviously, the key sort of policies that we want the public to look at is, of course, housing, leisure and well-being, transport and getting around, economy, education, environment, heritage and historic environment. A lot of these policies are covered in the joint local plan, but our policies are specific to Plympton St Mary. So what we're asking the public to do is to come along to one of our venues, to have a look at the plan, read all about what we're saying our policy is, and then agree or disagree with our policy. It's not a case of agreeing or disagreeing with housing being built in Plympton St Mary, because we all really know in a way there are going to be some housing built in there, whatever way we look at it. So we want to ensure that if we get our accreditation and we're passed to be a form, the inspector agrees with what we've done, we will then have the wherewithal to actually say this is our policies and this is what we want to agree with.
Okay.
We want, if we're looking at, for housing, for instance, we want to ensure that it's housing that is in keeping with the area and such things as that. It's all written in the plan.
Travellers setting up ad hoc encampments within Plympton's open spaces has been the bane of residents' lives, especially during the summer, and one encampment earlier this year, on land beside the junction of Glen Road with Parkstone Road, was particularly unwelcome. As a result, the council is contemplating re-landscaping the area with the installation of boulders and a height gate. But the authority is also considering an alternative, as Councillor Patrick Nicholson recently explained to residents.
There has been some discussion in the council around how best to enclose and prevent gypsy travellers from using this particular site. I wanted, following the meeting, to make you aware that the council is considering designating the land as a public space protection order, which actually criminalises under the Anti-Social Behaviour Crime and Police Act in the event of gypsy travellers actually using the site, so the powers to remove them are greater because it's a criminal act rather than going through a civil procedure. And the reason I raise this is that, given the fact that the intention is to designate that and a number of other sites, we ought to think as to whether the proposal that the council office has got at the moment is actually to put a load of boulders along Glen Road and then to potentially put an access gate with a height restriction. That's right. Along Parkstone Lane. So in effect it encloses the site. And I don't know whether, and this is really for discussion, whether, given the fact they're looking at a public space protection order, it's worth putting all the boulders in, plus that access gate. So it was just actually putting out for a discussion whether, given the fact that this is a proposal, if this goes ahead, do we actually want to spoil the sort of look of the green space by putting a load of boulders and a gate? So I was wondering if we wanted to, continue to pursue with the council the designation of the site, but have up our sleeve, if that didn't work in the future, then we could go down the road, put the boulders up and the access gate, and then you've still got the nice green vista that's been there for such a long time.
Having heard what Councillor Nicholson had to say, residents were concerned how travellers would be aware of the area's new designation and what notices would be put up.
Well, generally, the occupiers of the land are known to the authorities, and they generally know where they can go. And this is a cyclical process with the same people year in, year out, moving from site to site. So I'm not sure, quite frankly, I can ask her whether a sign would go up. Sign or not, they would generally know that certain sites would be designated this, and it would become a criminal matter rather than a civil matter.
Yeah, okay.
So it's really open for discussion. We're happy to feed this back if we're of the view that we would sooner this designation and then have that in abeyance, the boulders for the future if it doesn't work.
Another matter which concerned the residents was the practicality of exercising the new powers, with residents saying it was all very well arresting some of the travellers, but there would still be the problem of removing their vehicles if the owners were in custody. Councillor Nicholson sought to allay these concerns.
Generally, people aren't arrested immediately. They're generally told what the law is and given an opportunity to move on. In the event they don't move on, generally, if they've committed an offence. So Andy, on a public order matter, that's very low level, might give somebody a warning that they're drunk and disorderly up the Ridgeway, move off or I'll arrest you. They don't move off, they're arrested. If they move off, no further action is taken. So, they've got to apply the law, but they use it with some common sense.
But regarding children, I think you've got social services to be involved. Let's hope we don't have to use it at all.
Well, the problem at the moment with civil legislation, it takes such a long time to move them off certain sites that are most unsuitable for them to be on, like in the middle of a plain football pitch. Right, so, in terms of the boulders, we're not at the moment suggesting that we want the boulders. Perhaps if we want landscaping, we could look in the future about landscaping.
But I think there's questions here to be asked and answered, We don't know because it hasn't arisen, but maybe we should ask the council what else can be done. If a person's arrested, what happens to the rest of the family?
Well,
make them more clarify on that.
To be honest, there's a whole host of pieces of legislation that could be applied. It's highly unlikely they'd be arresting the whole family. But generally, it's a small number of gypsy travellers who turn up and move from site to site in the city of Plymouth, who generally know the rules and they work within the timescales that the court system takes. And move on when the bailiff turns up. But we just want them to move on a bit quicker from some of the sites that are less desirable for them to be on, because it has a greater impact on the local community. If they're arrested, they effectively get an ASBO, which I think the legislation would be that they would not be able to use that site again in 3 months. So certain sites, if they break their ASBO, then they face going to prison. So they would be more inclined to be directed to sites that are more accommodating because they have less impact on the community. And we know where those are, by the power station as an example. Alright, it's not great to look at it, but generally has less impact on the local community. And there are other sites around the area where it's more acceptable to be than it is, on some nice recreational space that people use.
Here in an ancient stannery town, the Plympton Podcast.
If you see somebody showing any of the signs of a stroke, you don't have to think about it, you just dial 999. Use the FAST test. F. Face. Has their face fallen on one side? Can they smile? A. Arms. Can they raise both arms and keep them there? S. Speech. Is their speech slurred? T. Time. Time to call 999 if you see any one of these signs. Act fast, make the call, dial 999.
Enjoy yourselves this bonfire night, but remember, even a little sparkler burns at around 2,000 degrees centigrade. Don't mess with fireworks.
Andrew Hill.
Back now to the subject of hedgehogs. Their volume has gone down by about a third in the past 10 years, and there are now under 1 million hedgehogs in the UK. I asked Linda Squires what had been the cause of this decline.
Judging on the hedgehogs that we have coming into us, I think a lot of it is the loss of habitat. People in their gardens have made maybe lots of areas into patio areas, maybe paved over areas, and I think it's causing the adult hedgehogs to have to go further and further to find their food sources. And with the young hedgehogs, the hoglets, when they're coming out of the nest, they too are having to stretch further and further afield. And because of this, they're getting themselves into lots of dangers, falling down people's drains if they haven't got a cover over them, falling into ponds if they don't have stones at the side for them to clamber out of. So I think a loss of habitat. Roads as well. We've got so many more roads and much busier. So when the hedgehog tries to cross from one garden to another, the chances of them actually being hit is greatly increased. And of course there's a lot of new houses going up, which means that they're becoming segregated, so you're getting small colonies or pools of hedgehogs, and they're not actually able to have the corridors that they once roamed along.
I mean, that's interesting you mention that, because I think part of the planning process these days, it's recommended that things like walls and fences and that have a little gap at the bottom for hedgehogs to be able to go under.
Yeah, Autumn Watch, Spring Watch, Hedgehog Street, all of these wonderful organisations that are kind of promoting and educating on wildlife and hedgehogs in particular have suggested the 5-inch by 5-inch opening, or I think it's 12.5 centimetre by 12.5 centimetre, allows the hedgehogs to get to enough places where they're going to find food in lovely undisturbed pockets of dense plants and under bushes, etc. It also means they can meet mates, and so we can keep the population with hedgehogs coming together during the spring and summer months. So yes, if people can open up their gardens, maybe have some hedging, maybe actually cut a hole in a fence if neighbours are willing, it is seemingly making a tremendous difference. And in some of the areas I've been visiting, I'm actually seeing increases in hedgehog populations, which is fabulous.
Now, I understand you're getting hedgehogs brought to you on a virtual weekly basis. How many are you getting coming into you?
For at least the last 3-4 months, we're having at least 3 hedgehogs a day needing rescuing. At one stage, I used to think that I would be able to help all the hedgehogs that I had phone calls about, but the reality is that we're getting far too many on a daily basis. Yesterday, we had 10 hedgehogs phoned to us that needed rescuing. We're running courses at the moment, so if anyone can come along and join us on these courses, I'm only charging £10 for a 4-hour course, which will, at the beginning or opening level, is to have hedgehog-friendly gardening and the do's and don'ts with the hedgehogs that you see, when you might need to intervene and pick a hedgehog up and when to leave it, right the way through to people who might want to become hedgehog rehabilitators themselves. And this is, I think, the way we're going to have to move forward, unless we find somebody who will give us lots of money to have a designated wildlife rescue centre where we could take 100, 200 hedgehogs over the winter time.
Yeah, I mean, it must be quite a task coping with 3 to 10 hedgehogs per day.
Yeah, from the courses, 3 people have now set up in different parts of the Plymouth and surrounding area, but at the moment they are already full, and they've only been running for the last 3 months or so. So we do need a lot more people to learn the do's and don'ts. The British Hedgehog Preservation Society set out very clear guidelines on when you can intervene and when not to intervene. Places like Vale Wildlife Hospital, Secret World, they all do excellent courses and information on their websites. So to save hedgehogs that are healthy being picked up, it's always worth giving these places or myself a phone call and finding out. But if they are injured, if they are sick, laying out in the open when you're not standing next to them, and if they're still there 10 minutes later, then those ones are probably very, very poorly and do need picking up and either phoning myself or another hedgehog carer, hedgehog wildlife rescue centre, or the veterinary hospitals or the RSPCA would all be able to help with sick and injured hedgehogs.
We were hearing earlier about the problems of speeding down Borringdon Hill, but that area is by no means unique, and those in Hemberton Heights have also been calling for action in their area. Councillor Nicholson had some good news for them at the recent Have Your Say meeting.
The situation's been that we've wanted obviously a crossing point, but based on our devolved highway budget, we were struggling with the other priorities that we've committed to in terms of Borringdon Hill and Clifton, Colebrook Lane, to actually then also fund in its entirety a crossing point. So we had a discussion with the head of highways and the cabinet member, and we're pleased to confirm that a pedestrian crossing is to be implemented in Hemberton Heights. The actual proposal is currently being designed, so we can't show you other than that it will be a pedestrian crossing. But clearly we need to ensure that the pedestrian crossing also caters for slowing traffic down on the vicinity, and the engineer on site was also looking potentially at narrowing the road with a pavement on the side where there is currently no pavement.
Yeah.
So David Wilcox has met with the highway engineer, and so we've had the dialogue. He knows what the issues are. The money's been confirmed, and we're hoping that it will be implemented this financial year. So I think it was our intention just to sit down with the highway engineer on this and a number of other issues to make sure that we meet the deadline. So when we've got the plan, I think what we'll aim to do is do a little circular around the area, just notifying people of what the proposals are. As you're aware, any changes to the highway have to be formally advertised in the Herald, and there's an opportunity for the public to comment on the proposal. So that will still need to be gone through.
Yeah.
And then obviously we'll aim then, once we've considered the responses, to implement as soon as we can. Well, we're aiming to sit down with the highway engineer next week to press in for these and other issues that just need to be resolved. But clearly that it's this financial year, so we would be, we really need to be looking at advertising it before Christmas and probably implementing it early New Year.
More now on the Plympton St Mary Neighbourhood Plan. I started the second part of my discussion with Rose Hamley by asking about protection of green spaces.
So does this plan have the ability to sort of protect green spaces in the area or not?
Yes, it does. I mean, that's an important thing. I mean, we're standing at the moment with Peacock Meadow in front of us, and it's important that this green space is preserved for the future. And we're looking at the joint plan in conjunction with our plan is up into 2034. So obviously it is important to keep these issues and these green spaces, because if you actually look at Plympton St Mary, it might look, if you took a drone and looked at it from the air, you would see lots of beautiful green spaces. But if you take out Hill School and Ridgeway Academy, those green spaces become much less.
Mm-hmm. Now, transportation is another thing that you've got down here. Is that just transportation within Plympton, or Plympton's links with other places, such as, for example, the ability to commute on bus between here and Neighbourhood Hospital, for example?
Yes, I mean, that's one of the points we're talking about. Our actual policy is transport and getting around. Transport, we all know there's big issues with transport in Plympton at the moment, and hopefully that's being looked at. But it's also, a lot of people are complaining that there are buses in Plympton, but they're not accessible to some people. I mean, the topography of Plympton St Mary in itself is a lot of hills, and someone may have to sort of walk up a hill to get to the bus, or down, or vice versa to get back from the bus. And we're looking at all those things, and we look at cycle routes and everything else, and to try and ensure that obviously we can't just deal with Plympton St Mary as an item. Plympton St Mary, it obviously goes through Chadleywood and Plympton Earl, and obviously we have to look at it as a whole.
Now, obviously, this is the Plympton St Mary plan, but as you quite rightly pointed out, there are certain synergies between other areas of Plympton. Is there a facility for other people outside the Plympton St Mary boundary to contribute to this process, or not?
Yes, we've actually said in our sort of leaflet we've put out, it's for people who live, work, or have an interest in Plympton St Mary. Now, we did a leaflet drop up in Ridgeway on Saturday, and we were absolutely amazed how many people come into Plympton, into Ridgeway, for shopping, for banks, for eating and drinking and so on. And we were amazed at the people we talked to, how many people weren't from Plympton. And it's important that we maintain Plympton as a thriving community, both for the people that live here and the people that come here, because that's how the place is going to survive, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's early days, because obviously this is the first of a number of consultation meetings that you're having over the next few weeks. What has been the sort of feedback among the people who've attended today?
Very good. I mean, they've come along and looked at the plan, and they've had a look at because it's lovely to sit down and read it carefully to yourself. I mean, there are plans available in the library, and you've got to read the plan in conjunction with the joint local plan, where there are, again, copies in the library. And we just try to ensure that you look at it not obviously for now, but for the future, because that's what it is. It's the future of Plympton St Mary.
Plympton's neighbourhood police team will be on the move at the end of the year. PC Andy Hocking gave more details to residents.
I suppose the most important thing is that as just after Christmas, the local neighbourhood team is moving to Crown Hill, or being based at Crown Hill. We're still covering Plympton geographically. There's no change in personnel. We're just starting at a different station. I understand there's been some concern which is understandable. But obviously, if there are specific issues that come to light, I know from the officers I work with and myself, if we need to start shifts earlier to get into Plympton a bit earlier, we can do, or vice versa. If we need to start later, there's never a problem with starting later in the police.
So what's going to happen at Plympton Police Station? Is it going to be sold off with Plympton, or
no? It's still going to be operational. You've still got various departments there, but it's just not going to be a base for local officers. It's probably be an operations department station rather than a local policing station. What's going to be used to replace us? I'm not being vague. I genuinely, probably am being vague, but I genuinely don't know what's going to take our place. But we are actually teamed with Crown Hill, so our neighbourhood team is Plympton, Crown Hill North, or Plymouth North, which is basically Crown Hill north of the Parkway, and Plympton. Whereas before we used to be linked with Plymstock. That changed quite a few years ago, so they're tied in with Charles Cross now.
There'll be no loss of staff at all. It just means that the staff will initially go to Crown Hill where they'll be briefed and then they'll be brought out.
Well, Plympton Council has had a briefing on this, and there are times when the neighbourhood team need to access greater resource that's a city-wide resource. So actually, what the inspector was telling us is, in effect, by going for a daily briefing, if those extra resources are required, it'll all get sort of passported to the other teams a lot more efficiently. Because at the moment, I think neighbourhood team have been turned over in Plympton and generally working in isolation, and it's all about the management of the staff and giving them appropriate support, but also accessing that extra resource as and when required.
We'll still be able to use an office at admittedly a smaller office, to do our computer work that unfortunately takes up quite a bit of our time now. But there will be, basically we come have our briefing, come down to Plympton after that, and then go back to finish the shift. We should be in Plympton for the majority of the shift.
There is to be investment in a number of local play areas in Plympton. Councillor Andrea Loveridge and her two ward colleagues, David James and Patrick Nicholson, shared the details with local residents.
Yeah, we've got an update on the play areas. Plans have been agreed. Peacock Meadow, Ashley Avenue will improve and will be sorted by Christmas. Borrington Close plans are under review and will be sorted by the new year.
So there's a city-wide programme of play area improvements. So we're really pleased that they're cracking on with ones in this community as well as across the city. That's really good.
Yeah.
So we hope everybody will be pleased with that. It's quite a few £1,000s worth of investment.
Have you got an idea of the costing, Patrick? You and I know it, and I think that Andre knows it, but I wonder if the residents know about it.
Well,
Rashley Avenue for a start.
Yeah, so remind us what it was again.
Rashley Avenue, that includes Peacock Meadow, it's about 41,000. And the one at Borrington, which is not part of this area, I think it was about 20,000, Patrick.
Yeah, it's about 25 something like that.
So £41,000 going into this area.
So generally, we've got the benefit of the amount of money for Peacock Meadow and Rashley Avenue of obviously refurbishing the player and putting in some new equipment in the skate ring, and it's generally fitness
equipment we've gone for.
There you are.
That's brilliant.
Let's see you all down there.
I'm just going to run the local fitness class.
I think it'd be brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. They've got them up at Yorkton Park Uniform.
Yeah. So I took that down. We have the adults and the children on it all. Yeah. So it's brilliant. It works for everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But a lot of this money's been sat in the bank for quite a long time. So I'm very keen that we actually invest it rather than it make interest.
The insurance company Aviva currently have a community funding scheme where people can vote for which causes should be supported. Hedgehog Care and Rehab are one of the causes vying for a slice of that money. Linda Squires explained to me what people could do to help.
We are extremely grateful to everybody who's fundraising this wonderful event at Plympton Academy. is really proving so successful. Jill, Caroline, Evie, who did her Duke of Edinburgh coursework with us during the summer, has made a tremendous difference. Claire, whose daughter did work experience and has looked at trying to help with fundraising. Up until 3 years ago, it all nigh on came out of my own pocket. When it got to £9,500 in 1 year, that was the time I thought, my savings have nigh on gone. I need to start looking at fundraising. And these people have stepped in. But organisations like Aviva are really so helpful to us. And they are offering £1,000 if we can get sufficient votes. And it's a fairly straightforward way of doing this is going on our Facebook site, which is Hedgehog Care and Rehab. And Claire has written it out so clearly that we just need to have people to register and then with your votes to nominate us, and we will then hopefully receive enough votes to receive £1,000, which for us will make a huge difference and allow us to provide the food, the bedding, the vets care and vets medication that we need, and also for taking the hedgehogs out to hedgehog friendly gardens and a few bits of kit that will make a lot of difference to new hedgehogs coming in.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned an important point there, the rehoming aspect of it once you've rehabilitated the hedgehogs and helped them recover from their injuries and so on. So where do you find the host gardens to take the rehabilitated hedgehogs?
Oh, we're very grateful to people who do have hedgehog-friendly gardens that have got lots of bushes still, undisturbed areas where you've got herbaceous borders, so lots of dense planting where they can forage, find food, they're under cover so they're not going to get attacked by maybe the family dog and things like this. They've got areas where they can nest under sheds. They love going under sheds. Maybe people have bought hedgehog boxes with solid wooden floors and they're up against the fences or the walls of the house. All of these kind of things make our lovely hedgehog-friendly gardens, and we get to know about them from people who bring us their hedgehogs and tell us about their gardens, and if they sound and fit in with the British Hedgehog Preservation Society guidelines, then we go out and do a visit, and so long as they haven't got a pond where the hedgehog's not going to be able to clamber out of, or a pet dog that might want to play with the hedgehog, then we look at releasing them. If we can't go out to visit the gardens, then over the years people have phoned us and said that they've got a hedgehog-friendly garden, and so when we're out and about we try and go and do a visit and get to know the people in the locality, and we're always happy to add more hedgehog-friendly gardens to our list, but it does take a little bit of time to go and visit these because obviously a lot of the time is taken feeding, cleaning, taking hedgehogs to the vets, and all the other bits that go with our day-to-day running and answering phone calls for hedgehogs needing rescuing.
Well, Linda, thanks very much indeed for telling us about the work of your charity. The event obviously has gone very well here for you today, and I know that Evie, the young teenager who put this on, was on a Duke of Edinburgh scheme with you, and that's inspired her to do this, I gather.
Oh, Evie was absolutely amazing. She was doing her bronze Duke of Edinburgh, wanted to do one of the units through working with wildlife and hedgehogs, and she dedicated Sunday mornings to come over at 7 o'clock in the morning, and that was quite a trip. I think it was a 10-mile trip for her coming over, so I thank her mum as well, and she would work for an hour and a half cleaning out the hedgehogs, taking out their dirty bedding, washing their bowls and putting the food down, and looking out for each of the hedgehogs to make sure that they were doing well that day, so that we wouldn't miss any that needed extra care or attention.
So for anyone who's interested in either helping a volunteer or to be a host garden for a hedgehog in the future, if they want to get in touch with you, just remind us of your contact telephone number.
The number's 075 852 305 27, and that's Hedgehog Care and Rehab. We also have a Facebook page which has lots of information on it, and the Facebook page is linked to our website, and we've got extra information about how to volunteer on it, and we are hoping to have some lovely pictures of the people who've got the hedgehog friendly gardens, so that people can get ideas of how to expand, and also if you've got similarly hedgehog friendly gardens, to give us a ring.
Okay, well, Linda, thanks for that, and good luck with your work here for the future.
Thank you very much. Lovely meeting you.
in an ancient stunnery town with programs just for you. The Plympton Podcast.
Back to another thorny issue of speeding, this time in Newnham Road, where Ward Councillor David James had been in dialogue with the police on the subject.
We took that up with Police Sergeant David Ratcliffe, that was Patrick and
very well.
And we put it over to him. He said he would look into it. So that was in August, but we had an email from him on the 3rd of October. I think it's better if I read it out to you. It says, "Good morning, councillors. In reference to the traffic operation which had taken place on Newnham Road, whereby it had been reported that you are using as a racetrack. If you remember, I explained in my last email that our roads policing team are placing monitoring devices on the new stretch of road, which will enable us to gather information on when the road is being used as a racetrack, how many vehicles use the road, what time the road is being used for antisocial driving, and on what days of the week. This is still in place and will be for the rest of the week, so that we have a full month of data to read, and in turn this will give us a much better understanding of when we can deploy our resources to give us the opportunity to be as effective as possible. However, in the meantime, we have developed a camera safety team, the police van with the speed detector pointing in the back window. You've all seen them in actual fact. That's been placed on the Newnham Road leading to the new stretch of road. The scale of the problem is clear when I said that in one day, 102 vehicles have been caught travelling in excess of the speed limit, the highest being around 55 miles per hour. A more concerning point is that a number of these vehicles were HGVs. No excess speeds were recorded on the new section of the road. This does not mean it is not happening. It means that when we were there, they did not record at any time. We had officers on that stretch of road and detected seatbelt and mobile phone offences. Once we have the data back from our monitoring devices, we'll be able to target the new stretch of road more effectively. It may be one or two issues that have reduced some of the speed. The first is we have had a camera safety team parked on Newnham Road, which will always be deterrent for speeding once this becomes common knowledge to those that use the road. Secondly, I do not know if we are aware, but there is a serious accident on the new road whereby a motorcyclist had life-changing injuries as a result of him losing control of his motorbike on one of the bends. This was in the local paper, so this could have also made the racing a bit more daunting activity. I'm sure that the fear factor will diminish in time and we'll take up the activity again to look for somewhere else to race. I want to reassure you that we have and still are looking this very seriously, and we'll do everything we can to reduce the speeds, stop the racing, and in turn hopefully not have a recurrence of the accident which took place there last month. The operation is still ongoing and will be for some time. Once I have a sight of the final report, I will update you. So they are looking at it. So we just got to wait for another update on that now.
Now to the final part of my discussion with Rose Hamley of the Plympton St Mary Neighbourhood Forum. I asked her what the next stage would be once the various consultation meetings about the group's neighbourhood plan had been concluded.
The next stage is that it then goes to Plymouth City Council for them to look at it, the content of it, the legality of it all, and after that eventually it will go to an inspector who will look at the plan and either yay or nay it. I mean, between when it goes to the council and after our consultations finish, we then have to look at what we've had been said by people that have come along to the consultations. If there's something that they've said that is not even on our within our policies, or they vehemently disagree with one of our policies, we're going to have to look at it again and go back to the drawing board with it and decide whether we take that on board or whatever. And then eventually it'll go to the inspector, and then it'll go to a referendum. The referendum will hopefully be sometime next year, and the whole of the residents of Plympton St Mary will get a chance to vote on the referendum whether they agree with our draft neighbourhood plan or whether they don't.
Okay, and let's say it goes to the referendum and it is approved by the people of the area. What weight does that then carry with the council's joint local plan?
That's why we've done it, because it'll mean that anything they want to do in Plympton St Mary, we will get a chance to have our say against it. And if it goes against what our policies that have been approved, obviously we stand a better chance of agreeing or disagreeing with it.
All right, so well, this has obviously been quite a lot of work to get to this point, and there's still some further work, obviously, that lies ahead. So we wish you well with it. And you've got some other consultation meetings coming up in November. If we can have the dates, perhaps, for the November ones.
The next meeting in November is Colebrook Community Centre from 5:30 till 7:30, and then on Friday the 3rd of November at Harewood House from 10 o'clock till 12 o'clock, and the Friday the 10th of November from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock at Woodward Methodist Church, and then Thursday the 16th of November from 5 till 7 o'clock at Harewood House, and then finally on Thursday the 23rd of November from 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock at Plympton Library.
Okay, I think there's also one on the 7th of November, that's also at Plympton Library as well.
That's right, there's one on the 7th of November at Plympton Library from 10 till 12, and I will emphasise that there are copies of the plan at Plympton Library for the whole of the duration of the consultation period, which takes place till Monday the 27th of November.
Okay, so perhaps an idea to go along to the library, have a look at it, and then come down and have a more substantial conversation at one of these meetings.
Yeah, that's true. You go to the library, have a look at it, and then if you want to come down and chat to us, and then you can make your decision as to whether you agree with us or not. But we do need your feedback.
Okay, and if all goes according to plan, is it likely this a referendum will take place at the same time as the city council elections next year? Is that the thought process at the moment?
Well, we would like it to happen then, but I mean, it all depends on lots of things. It depends how long it takes for it to go through the next stages, and that's the most important bit. That is in the lap of the gods, basically.
Yeah. Okay, Rose, well, many thanks for telling us about that, and well done on the work that you and your group have put into this project.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Crime figures in Plympton have increased recently. PC Hocking outlined the cause.
Just in comparison to last year, there has been a slight increase, admittedly from a very low starting point. Just in the last 3 months compared to the same 3 months of last year, since the last meeting, there's been an increase in crimes from 18 last year to 25 this year. Perhaps the spike in that is some minor assaults, a lot of which now school assaults get reported to us. So we're duty bound to report them as a crime. We might not take any action, and more often than not we don't, because the school will take primacy in that if it's happened on school premises. And unfortunately we've had not so much in the Colebrook area, but certainly in other parts of Plympton, we're having spikes in vehicle crime, both damage, which is 6 or 7 a night, from... Well, we have an idea who it is, but proving it has been tricky. But we've had a lot of vehicle crime throughout Plympton, which could be prevented by people locking their doors. It's car doors, it's looking at cars, it's primarily insecure vehicles. We don't get smash and grabs of cars property anymore. It's people try the car door handle, because all cars should have alarms on the faulty with. So if the car's unlocked, game on for taking stuff, unfortunately.
Another issue raised at the Colebrook Have Your Say meeting was progress with a safety island at the junction of Newnham Road and Clifton Avenue. Councillor Nicholson gave an update.
The Clifton Avenue-Newnham Road junction pedestrian safety island, what we're hoping is that will be paid for, it will be paid for, on the back of the housing planning application in Colebrook Village. So I've been having discussions with the planning officer to condition the Section 106 financial contribution to pay for that island. So that's planning to it will go to the planning committee in November. So assuming that's approved and the conditions have been approved, then as soon as they start work, we can expect that island to be provided. Then there were the issue of brambles on the pathway outside the perimeter of Peacock Meadow. Those got trimmed back after the last meeting. There are also some issues of blocked drains in the thoroughfare of Colebrook. Those were cleaned. Also, Plymouth Road at that time was also cleaned. We asked for them all to be done. So we followed that up. We are waiting. There were 2 bins removed, one from the bus stop opposite Tesco's in Glen Road. That's now been replaced. And there's one also in Newnham Road, just near the storage facility by the bus stop. That still needs to be replaced. So again, at this meeting earlier, there are a number of bins that have been removed and not replaced.
We've been hearing in this podcast about the work of the Plymouth Hedgehog Care and Rehab charity. They were the beneficiaries of a Shop for Hedgehogs event at Plympton Academy recently. 14-year-old Aoife Henry was the inspiration behind it. During the course of the event, I caught up with her to learn more as to why she'd got involved with the Hedgehog group.
Well, for my Duke of Edinburgh, I had to do a volunteering section, and for part of that, I really enjoy looking after animals. So we found Linda online, and then I just really wanted to help her because we went over to see where the hedgehogs were kept, and we noticed that she was struggling a little bit, so we thought we wanted to help her.
So when you were doing your Duke of Edinburgh with the Hedgehog Care and Rehab group, what did you actually yourself get involved in?
Okay, so when I was there, I'd usually get there either at 10 or 7 in the morning, depending on what time she needed me, and we'd work for about an hour and a half on cleaning out the hedgehog enclosures, feeding them, making sure that they're well, and weighing them to make sure that they're over 400 grams, because that's the required. Yeah.
And did you learn anything particular about hedgehogs during the time you were doing this work experience thing?
A lot about how to make sure they're cleaned out properly, and so it's sanitary for them to have the best rehabilitations.
Yeah. And have you actually seen hedgehogs in the wild before you started getting involved with the group behind?
Yeah,
yes.
all the time actually.
Yeah.
My dad lives in Cornwall, so we have a lot of them over there in the woods and stuff. So.
Okay, so you obviously identified that the group needed some help financially to fund the work that they were doing. But what led to you thinking of this particular type of event?
Well, actually, we've done one before,
right.
Not for hedgehogs, but just in general for another charity. And I thought of the idea with my mum, and we just wanted to raise a bit more money than was coming in at the moment. So. Yeah.
And when you sort of put the wheels in motion for an event like this to take place, I suppose you never quite know how successful or not it's going to be, but have you been pleased with how the day's gone?
Oh yeah, definitely. And we've got a lot of people that, although they haven't come, they've bought raffle tickets, and we've made a lot of money from that as well. So.
And I think it's quite a special prize here today of a hedgehog picture, isn't there?
Oh yes, it's by Roseanne Bell, and it's worth £550 to £600, which is crazy to pay £5 for a ticket and win that. So. Yeah.
And how did you come by getting that prize?
Well, actually, we'd advertised the event on Facebook, and then we were. She just contacted us, and yeah.
So you snapped her hand off when she offered it to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, congratulations on a splendid event here today, and well done on what you've done.
Thank you so much.
And finally for this month, we learn about this year's Theatre Royal Pantomime, which is going to be Peter Pan. Keith Jolly has been talking with the show's executive producer, Jonathan Kiley.
Jonathan, Peter Pan, it's such a wonderful pantomime, isn't it?
It is. It's a great pantomime subject. Cinderella, Aladdin, Peter Pan has become one of the top-selling subjects, and there's every child, I think every little boy wants to be Captain Hook or a pirate, and it's a great story. It's a legendary story. Every girl wants to be Tinkerbell. I remember years ago we went to Great Ormond Street, of course, and all the percentage of the profits of Peter Pan go to Great Ormond Street every year, and we raise millions of pounds for them, and we went round the wards with Peter Pan and Tinkerbell. And there was a girl in a ward who genuinely believed that the girl playing Tinkerbell was Tinkerbell, and said to her, "Will you fly for me in the room?" We had to make an excuse that she couldn't really fly today because the room was too small. But children do believe in Tinkerbell and Peter Pan, and it's one of the greatest stories. And from our point of view as a pantomime, we've put lots of comedy into it, but we've got the biggest crocodile you've ever seen here in Plymouth. We've got one here today, but the one we've got in the show is even bigger, and that won't be a real surprise in the show. But you've got the Lost Boys, you've got a great story, Tinkerbell, the mermaid, a comedy mermaid, Steve McFadden as the evil Captain Hook, but with tongue-in-cheek, of course, and Andy Ford, one of my favourite comics, who's from Devon. He was born in Exeter, and he's never played pantomime here, which is extraordinary. Right. He's done many years in Bristol, but he's a lovely, lovely Devon comic, and he's warm and cuddly and very, very funny. So it's a great combination with Steve and him working together as a double act in the show. And we've got a Joe Slyke playing Peter Pan, who's been in Blood Brothers for years, a great West End artist. Rachel Spry playing the mermaid again, which was in Mamma Mia for years. So it's a great West End company with Steve and Andy. So I'm excited, and I know what's going to happen.
And the interesting thing is, outside just now when they had the photo call, they had the crocodile out there, and it's just amazing to see people just jump out the way as soon as it's
Well, it is. The one we've got here today is pretty huge, but the one in the show, I say, is even big. We actually have two in the show because they're brothers. We have a big brother and a baby brother, and so they are pretty scary. I mean, and one of them does come out very close to the audience, and it is genuinely scary. But it's good. The theatre should make you laugh, cry. It should scare you. It should make you. It should have everything. And pantomime. One of the things I love about pantomime, it does have all the ingredients of theatre, and a child experiences all those in 2 hours in a pantomime, and the magic of pantomime, which is so important. Walking into this beautiful theatre, which is the National Theatre of the South West, and it's a stunning theatre. The facilities here are brilliant, and the shows here are amazing. So to come here into this great building and see 2 hours of magic on stage should never leave you. Really, should stay with you forever.
And it's interesting because I know, talking to you before, saying that you're already thinking about next year's pantomime. I mean, does it get any easier?
It doesn't get. No, it gets more difficult, because this year we had 24 shows last year. This year we've got 35 productions all over the country. So the casting, which I do, gets more and more difficult. Finding stars to be in these shows is very difficult, and a lot more people to cast and contract, and a lot more shows to produce. And so no, it doesn't get. I wish it did get easier, but it doesn't get any easier. But we love it. It's what we do, and we adore pantomime. 52 weeks of the year we're pantomiming in our office. It's a very funny place to be, because the gags never stop, of course.
I mean, this show actually starts on the 15th of December and finishes on the 13th of January.
Yes.
Which is a fairly long run. Is this one of the longest runs?
Well, average. I mean, no, some of them run 2 months. Some run 8 weeks. Newcastle, I think, runs 8-9 weeks now. So this is about an average run. There are some 6 weeks. Birmingham, 6 weeks, and the shortest I think we have is in Hastings. A couple of weeks in Hastings is the shortest one, but really the majority are 3, 4, 6, 8 weeks.
So when you're looking for people for next year's pantomime, you've obviously got to find people that are going to be free.
It's a big commitment, yes. And if they're in soaps like Steve's in EastEnders, it's tricky, because they have to plan their schedule and storylines way ahead. So it is difficult for the artists to get released. A lot more artists, if they could be released, would be in pantomime. But it's difficult, and I completely get that. All the big soaps have got to work out their schedules. So, but there's kind of a rota system that goes on, I think. So they release some people 1 year and some people another year. But it's not easy, and we do try everybody every year, and constantly trying to find new names to come into pantomime, and iconic names like Steve, who of course have been on our television screens for many, many years, and who are iconic characters in EastEnders, one of the biggest soaps.
Because Plymouth's been fairly lucky over the past couple of years, because you had Paul Zerdin, who won America's Got Talent. And then last year you had Leslie. It was in Strictly Come Dancing.
I know.
I mean, it's
and Steve's on the telly all the time, which is great. That's really, really good.
Right, yeah.
And we had a great time last year, and record-breaking business. And I think the way it's going at the moment, it's going to be the same this year. And as I say, it helped by the fact that we've got great stars in a great subject, a great story.
Well, that's it for another month. Hope you've enjoyed the assortment of topics and features we've had this time. So with my customary thanks to audionautics.com for our theme and production music, all that remains is for me to say thanks for listening, and bye for now.
The Plympton Podcast.